The night I overheard my husband planning to destroy me was the same night I learned his paralyzed sister had been walking all along. It was supposed to be a peaceful dinner by the ocean warm lights. Flickering under palm trees, soft music in the background, glasses clinking, laughter rising from a table I should have been sitting at. But instead, I was in the shadows, hidden just a few feet away, clutching a tiny earpiece as the truth poured into my ears like acid. "She's never been anything special," my mother-in-law said, her voice cold and clipped. "If you're divorcing her, at least do it smart. Say she's emotionally unstable. Your lawyer can work with that." Then I heard my husband, the man I had once given up my career for, the one I used to make breakfast for every morning. He leaned in and said, "We'll get the assets split in my favor. If we play it right, she gets nothing." My stomach dropped. I stood frozen behind the palm trees, barely breathing. My hands clenched at my sides. And just when I thought I couldn't feel more betrayed, the woman sitting next to him reached across the table and placed her hand on his. He smiled, not the forced smile I had grown used to seeing lately. This one was real, warm, affectionate, like I never even existed. I wanted to scream, but before I could move, someone gently touched my arm. It was Emma, his sister. She looked at me, her eyes steady, calm. Then she whispered, "Are you ready?" She wasn't in her wheelchair. She was standing, upright, balanced, strong. And just like that, my world snapped in half. "Let's go," she said softly, a small smirk playing on her lips. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer alone in this fight. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I used to believe in dreams. When I was little, I'd sing into a hairbrush and imagine the world pausing to listen. A sold-out crowd, a spotlight just for me. I thought my voice could carry me places no map ever could. But dreams don't always survive real life. After graduating from Texas State University with a degree in finance, I traded microphones for spreadsheets, the spotlight for cubicles. I got a job at a credit union in Austin, nothing glamorous but stable, safe, the kind of job that paid student loans and pleased parents. That's where life stood still, until I met Travis. It was at a college reunion barbecue. Hot afternoon, cheap beer, plastic chairs, in the backyard of someone I barely remembered. Travis was charming, the kind of man who smiled with his whole face. He had this easy confidence, like the world would always open doors for him. He told me he used to dance, said he'd been on a competitive hip-hop crew in college, but gave it up when his dad pressured him to enter finance. I remember thinking, he gets it. He knows what it's like to bury a part of yourself. We started dating not long after. He brought me flowers for no reason, left notes in my purse, played songs on the radio that made me think he saw me, really saw me. When he proposed a year later at Zilker Park, kneeling under the oak trees with fairy lights strung above, I said yes with my whole heart. I thought I was saying yes to a partner, a forever teammate. After we got married, I quit my job. Travis was working at a financial advisory firm in Houston, making good money. He told me I'd worked hard enough and that I deserved to rest, maybe pursue music again. I believed him. I packed up my life, moved out of Austin, and let go of the girl I used to be. We settled into a modest home just outside Houston, 20 minutes from his parents. That's when things started to feel heavier. His mom, Carolyn, was the kind of woman who folded towels like it was a competitive sport. She never raised her voice, but somehow everything she said felt like an instruction manual I hadn't read. "Rachel, dear, the curtains look better when pulled left to right. Or try not to let the kitchen smell like garlic, it lingers. And then there was Emma Travis's younger sister. Everyone said she had suffered severe nerve damage after a high fever as a child. She couldn't speak, couldn't walk. She sat in a wheelchair by the living room window, eyes always on the sky like she was watching a world she didn't get to touch. At first I pitied her. Then I noticed something, the way her eyes tracked every conversation, the way she smiled at certain words, how she held a pencil not loosely like someone uncoordinated, but with steady intention. It unsettled me, but I didn't question it. Why would I? Carolyn was always nearby, always correcting me, always reminding me I wasn't really part of the family. She called me sweet the way people say, "Bless your heart," when they actually mean you're pathetic. Still I smiled. I baked casseroles. I played the role. Because that's what good wives do, right? They blend in, they adapt, they hold it together, even as the seams start to split. At first, the cracks were so small I almost convinced myself they weren't there. Travis stopped texting me during the day no more. "How's your lunch?" or "miss you" messages. When I handed him his coffee in the morning, he'd mumble thanks without even looking up. He started working later and later, saying the firm was understaffed. Deadlines piling up. New clients needing attention. I believed him. At least I tried to. But believing got harder when he stopped touching me, stopped asking me how I was, stopped noticing I had rearranged the living room, cut my hair, started crying in the shower. Meanwhile, his mother showed up at our house more and more, always uninvited, always with a bag of groceries and a list of instructions. "You shouldn't keep shoes by the door, Rachel. It makes the house look chaotic. Travis doesn't like clutter. Do you fold his laundry by color?" That's how I've always done it. I'd nod, I'd smile, I'd swallow the sting and keep moving. And yet, in the middle of all this coldness, there was Emma. She didn't speak, didn't walk, but somehow she listened. When I sat with her on the back porch, I'd talk out loud just to hear a human voice. She'd respond by drawing, simple little sketches, birds' windows, music notes. One day I drew a treble clef in the air. She smiled and pointed to her heart. That was the moment I started learning sign language. Late at night, while Travis typed away on his laptop, I'd sit in bed watching ASLE videos on mute. At first, just the basics, hello, thank you, happy. But as the weeks went by, I started learning how to really say something. Not just with hands, but with presence, with intention. Emma watched me like she already knew, like she had been waiting for me to unlock a door we both stood behind. And the closer I grew to her, the colder Travis became, like he knew something I didn't, like he could feel the ground shifting beneath us, but was pretending it was still solid. I used to think that distance in a marriage came from big fights, shouting matches, slammed doors, nights spent on the couch. But what no one tells you is that silence can be louder than any argument. It started with the little things. Travis stopped asking if I wanted dessert when he brought home takeout, stopped waiting for me to sit before starting dinner, stopped laughing at the shows we used to watch together. He'd come home late, claim his boss needed last-minute reports, or that traffic was awful again. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But the way he moved around the house, like I wasn't even there, that was harder to ignore. I remember one night I asked him gently, "Are you okay? Is something going on between us?" He didn't look up from his phone. "It's just work, Rachel. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it." As if my heart unraveling was just a miscalculation. I stopped pressing. He stopped pretending. And in the stillness that settled between us, I found myself turning to Emma more and more. She welcomed me with those wide, observant eyes. When I entered the room, she'd tap her sketch pad with excitement, like she'd been waiting. We had our own rhythm now. I'd bring her tea in the afternoon. She'd draw a silly cartoon of me tripping over her mom's obsessive rules. She made me laugh genuinely, something I hadn't done in weeks. Carolyn noticed. One day she found me brushing Emma's hair and said, "You're getting too comfortable in that room." I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because I had learned. Silence with her was sharper than sarcasm. Travis, of course, said nothing. When I mentioned the way Carolyn spoke to me, he shrugged and said, "She's just like that. You have to stop taking things so personally." So I stopped telling him, and he stopped asking. One rainy Sunday, I made pumpkin bread, Emma's favorite. I brought it over to their house, hoping to surprise her. But as I walked in, I heard laughter. Travis was in the living room, with Carolyn laughing like he hadn't in months. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "Oh, you're here. I made this for Emma," I said quietly, setting the tray on the coffee table. "You didn't tell me you'd be here," he muttered. Carolyn cut in. "Family can drop in any time." The way she said family, warm on the surface, sharp underneath, told me everything I needed to know. I walked to the window. Emma was sitting in her usual spot, no sketch pad, just a soft blue pillow in her lap. She looked at me, blinking slowly. I signed, "I'm okay," but my hands were shaking. That night when Travis and I got home, he said nothing. I hung up my coat, then turned to face him. "Is there something you're not telling me?" He paused. "What kind of question is that?" "I don't know. I just feel like you're not really here anymore." He sighed, rubbed his temples. "It's just work. You're overthinking." There it was again, overthinking. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Something was breaking, and I was the only one trying to hold the pieces together. The morning Travis told me they were all going to Hawaii, something inside me cracked. He walked into the kitchen, his expression unreadable, and said, "My parents are planning a family trip next week. Just a quick getaway." I smiled, surprised but hopeful. "That sounds nice. Hawaii, right? You and I talked about going there for our anniversary, remember?" He didn't smile back. He didn't even meet my eyes. This time, it's just them, me, mom, dad. They want to keep it small. My heart skipped. I blinked. And me, Travis stared at the table. "We were hoping you'd stay back to watch Emma. You're the only one she's really close to." For a second, I couldn't speak. The sting of being left behind, again this time, intentionally, made it hard to breathe. "You want me to stay, home alone, while you all go on vacation without even asking me?" "She can't travel," he replied, almost rehearsed. "You know that. It's too far. And she likes you. You're good with her." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Carolyn entered with her usual air of control, barely waiting to be invited in. I assume Travis explained everything she said, her sharp eyes scanning me like I was a disappointing grade on a report card. "Ivy, Emma will need supervision. You understand." She didn't ask, she declared, as if I was the staff. And this was just another duty. I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "Of course, I'll take care of her." Carolyn gave a satisfied nod and left without another word. Travis followed behind her, stopping only to whisper, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you in a hard spot. It's just already arranged." I looked at him. "It sounds like you made the decision before you ever told me." He didn't answer. That evening, I went to their house with an overnight bag and a quiet heart. Emma sat by the window, the fading sunlight catching in her hair. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. I signed slowly. "I'm staying with you for a few days, okay?" She blinked, then for the first time she signed something I had never seen before. They left you. Again, it hit me hard. She wasn't drawing anymore. She was communicating. Really communicating. I nodded. Yes, they went to Hawaii. Emma stared at me, then signed something that made my breath catch. We have plans too. I paused. What do you mean? She just smiled. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, her words circling my mind like a riddle. The next morning, I brought her a cup of vanilla coffee, the kind she liked. I knocked, then opened the door. She was lying on her side, staring out the window like always. I brought you coffee vanilla blend, I said softly. She turned her head, and then she moved, pushed herself up, sat straight. No trembling, no effort. I froze the cup still in my hand. Then she stood, full height, balanced. I'll say no hesitation. I couldn't breathe. What are you doing? I whispered. Emma laughed. A soft, warm, completely clear laugh. Calm down, she said. Don't freak out. I almost dropped the coffee. You can talk and walk. She nodded, stepping toward me, like she'd been doing it all her life. I never lost the ability. It was all an act. My mouth opened, no words came out. Why I finally managed. Why would you pretend for so long? She sat down across from me, her voice calm, steady. I'm not Travis's full sister. My mom was his dad's first wife. Carolyn isn't my mother. Never treated me like family. Just like an obligation. I sat down slowly, hands shaking. When I was 10, I had a fever. Carolyn didn't take me to the hospital. Told the neighbors I had brain damage. After that, I stayed silent. It was safer. I felt like I was falling through years of assumptions. You pretended this entire time. Not forever, she said, just until I found someone who saw me. Her eyes locked with mine. You saw me, Rachel, not as a burden, not as a responsibility, as a person. The room was still. Then she stood, walked to the closet, and pulled out a small suitcase. Pack a bag, she said. We're going to Hawaii. I blinked. What? She grinned. I booked the tickets weeks ago. Hotel 2. Dad left me some money. I saved it for the right moment. I stared at her like she was a stranger, and somehow more familiar than anyone I had ever known. Why now? I whispered. Emma's smile faded into something serious. Because you need to see the truth, Rachel. You need to know what Travis and Carolyn really are. She took my hand, and Hawaii is where it all falls apart. ChatGPT said the flight to Hawaii felt surreal. Just yesterday, I was the wife left behind, asked to play caretaker, while my husband and his family enjoyed Mai Tais by the beach. Now, I was on that same island, sitting next to his paralyzed sister, who had just revealed a decade-long secret. Emma wore a simple white tee and jeans. Her hair pulled back, sunglasses hiding the spark in her eyes. She looked nothing like the fragile girl everyone believed couldn't stand on her own. She looked unstoppable. As we landed in Honolulu, I could barely breathe. The resort Emma booked was luxury white sand beaches, blue infinity pools, staff in floral shirts greeting us with leis. She handed me my room key like it was no big deal. Everything had been paid in full, under her name. How did you do all this? I asked that night, as we sat in our suite, the ocean humming just beyond the glass doors. She smiled. My dad left me money when he passed. Carolyn had no idea. I've been saving it for something that mattered. But the hotel, the flights, I planned it down to the hour. They're staying in the next building over poolside suite. Mom booked dinner for them at 600 tonight. I made us a reservation for 700, same restaurant. I swallowed. What are we going to do? She looked at me, her face serious for once. We're going to let them show you who they really are. That evening, I put on a long navy dress and brushed waves into my hair. Emma wore an emerald silk jacket and a quiet kind of confidence that lit up every hallway we walked through. As we approached the restaurant, I could already hear the clinking of glasses and bursts of laughter. Emma paused behind a row of palm trees just off the deck. There she whispered, nodding toward the corner table. I peeked around. Carolyn was laughing, genuine, relaxed. Travis was leaning in toward a woman I'd never seen before. She was young, stylish, beautiful, and she had her hand on his knee. My blood went cold. I saw messages on Carolyn's phone, Emma said quietly. She calls her the backup plan. I couldn't breathe. That was the moment Emma slipped a tiny wireless earpiece into my palm. I hid a recorder under their table earlier today. I guarantee they'll say something you need to hear. I slipped it in, heart pounding, and then the voices came. She's nothing special, Carolyn said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Travis chuckled. If we say she's emotionally unstable, I won't have to pay alimony. My lawyer says we could actually spin this in my favor. Carolyn raised her glass. She's never done a thing for this family. At least this new girl has a backbone. That was it. My hands went ice cold, my jaw locked. I pulled the earpiece out, tucked it into my clutch, and looked at Emma. She didn't ask. She just nodded. We walked out from behind the palm's heels, echoing against the wooden deck. Travis looked up first. His smile died instantly. Carolyn froze mid-laugh, her wine glass suspended in mid-air. I stopped just a few feet from their table and said calmly, "Good evening. Hope everyone's enjoying dinner." Travis stood eyes wide. "Rachel, what are you, how?" Before he could finish, Emma stepped beside me. All eyes turned to her. She walked forward, slowly, confidently, no wheelchair in sight. Carolyn gasped. You're walking?" Emma tilted her head. "I've been walking for years. I just figured it was easier for you if I didn't." The new woman shrank back in her chair, clearly realizing she'd stepped into something bigger than she understood. I pulled out my phone, pressed play on the recording. Carolyn's voice spilled into the open air. "Say she's emotionally unstable. Never did a thing for this family." Then Travis's voice, clear, unmistakable. "We could actually come out ahead." Silence. The tables nearby went quiet. Travis shot up from his chair. "Rachel, what the hell are you doing? You're humiliating me." I looked him dead in the eye. "You've been humiliating me for months, just never in public." Carolyn reached for her napkin, eyes wild. "We can explain. No need I cut in. I have the proof. And I'll be speaking with my attorney first thing tomorrow." Travis reached out to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "You already made your choice, Travis. Now you get to live with it." The new woman stood quickly, trying to disappear into the crowd, but Emma called after, her calm ice in her tone. "You might want to get a lawyer too. In some states, infidelity during marriage comes with consequences." Travis turned red, rage burning in his face. "You're ruining my life." I almost laughed. "You did that yourself." Just then, the restaurant manager appeared, 2 security guards flanking him. "I'm sorry, sir," the manager said firmly. "We're going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing the other guests." Travis tried to protest, but when he saw every pair of eyes on him, he shut his mouth and let them escort him out. Carolyn sat frozen, her wine glass trembling in her hand, the power in her face gone. Emma and I turned, and we walked away. No yelling, no tears, just the quiet rhythm of heels on teakwood and the sound of a lie collapsing behind us. Back in our suite, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the ocean roll in, watching the sun sink past the horizon in slow, heavy silence. I had spent months doubting myself, gaslighting my own instincts, wondering if I was too sensitive, too needy, too much. But now I had heard it with my own ears. The woman who raised my husband, the man I married, They had talked about me like I was a liability to remove, a financial inconvenience to maneuver around. The next morning, I called a law firm in Houston, recommended by an old college friend. The receptionist connected me with Marilyn Carter, Divorce and Civil Litigation. Her voice was calm, professional, and warm. I told her everything, from the way Travis slowly withdrew, to Carolyn's treatment, to Emma's revelation. I played the recording over the phone, described the dinner, the mistress, the calculated plan to paint me as unstable. Marilyn listened carefully, then said, "You've got more than enough to file. Infidelity, coercion, emotional abandonment. And if you're willing, a third-party alienation suit against the other woman." I exhaled slowly. I want to do everything the law allows. No more keeping the peace. No more swallowing the pain. Marilyn's response was simple. "We'll take care of it." From there, things moved fast. Emma handed over old messages from Carolyn's phone. Travis's hotel receipts showed 2 guests. Screenshots, call logs, bank transfers. Everything I needed was added to the case file. A week later, Travis received the divorce notice served directly to his firm's front desk. He called me that same night, the first time I'd heard his voice since the dinner. "Rachel, can we talk, please? This doesn't have to get ugly." I didn't respond, just hung up. Then the emails started, then texts, then messages from mutual friends. But I stayed quiet. I'd spent too long being quiet in the wrong ways. Now my silence was power. 3 weeks later, he showed up at my apartment in Houston. He looked tired, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled polo shirt that used to be crisp. "I lost my job," he said without greeting. "They let me go after the recording got out." Said it violated ethics. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Malene, she left me, said she didn't sign up for this kind of drama." He tried to laugh. I didn't. "And Mom, my dad walked out on her. Took most of their money when he left. She's broke. Doesn't even have a place to stay." There was a pause, a silence meant to stir guilt. "Rachel, we've made mistakes, I know that. But we're still your family." I tilted my head, almost curious. "You want help?" His voice cracked. "Just something to get us through. You've always been the kind one, the stable one." Behind him on the sidewalk stood Carolyn. Her arms were folded tight, her eyes lowered, no longer filled with judgment, just shame and exhaustion. I thought about all the times I had stood in front of her and smiled while she cut me down with backhanded compliments. How she never once defended me, never once thanked me for taking care of Emma. How she looked right through me like I was temporary. I looked Travis in the eye. "I begged you for respect, for honesty, for the smallest scrap of compassion. And all I got was silence." He reached for the doorframe as if to steady himself. "I was wrong, okay? I was stupid. I thought I could fix it." "No," I said, my voice low. "You thought I'd never fight back." I closed the door softly, not to slam it in anger, but to end it with finality. Inside, I walked to my balcony and opened the small jar of sea salt Emma had gifted me the day we got back from Hawaii. Just a little ritual, she had said with a grin, to sweep out whatever darkness they left behind. I sprinkled a line along the threshold, letting the grains catch in the wind. Not because I believed in magic, but because I believed in choosing myself. The divorce finalized within 2 months. Travis was ordered to split all marital assets evenly. The court granted me 3 years of spousal support. Malene, the woman he took to Hawaii, was served a civil suit for third-party interference. It wasn't just about money, it was about principle. About proving I wasn't disposable. When the first payment landed in my account, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt restored. I went out to dinner with Emma that night. We toasted with sparkling cider and silence. The kind of silence that comes after a long, bitter storm. "You're free," she said, smiling. I nodded. "So are you." She moved to Denver shortly after enrolling in a graphic design program she'd always dreamed of. Her art, once scribbles, hidden in sketch pads, now hung in local galleries. She finally had a voice, a place, and me. I moved into a small top-floor unit in downtown Austin, overlooking Lady Bird Lake, close to my old campus, like circling back, but stronger. I started consulting again, finance work on my terms with clients I respected. I built boundaries. I kept a whiteboard near my desk that read, "You are not who they said you were." I still make tea every afternoon, still hum when I fold laundry. But now, no one calls it a waste of time. They call it healing. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. No delivery, no appointment. Just me, the soft hum of an acoustic playlist, and the golden light streaming through my apartment windows. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there like ghosts that had stumbled into daylight were Travis and Carolyn. But they didn't look like themselves. Travis had lost weight. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with exhaustion. His once perfect hair hung limp as if he'd stopped caring. Carolyn looked even worse. Her blazer wrinkled, her shoes dusty, her presence smaller. For the first time in my life, she didn't look like a woman in control. She looked like someone who had run out of cards to play. "Rachel," Travis started, voice hoarse, "please. Can we talk?" I didn't step aside, didn't invite them in. I just stood there, hand resting on the doorframe. He shifted, eyes flicking everywhere but my face. I lost everything he said. The job. They fired me after the lawsuit. Malene left me the moment the checks stopped. I'm barely scraping by. I stayed silent. My dad walked out on Mom. She's got nothing now. No house, no savings. We're just trying to survive. I looked at Carolyn. She didn't say a word. Just kept her head lowered, hands clasped like a student awaiting punishment. "I know you have every reason to hate us," Travis whispered. "But if there's any part of you that still remembers what we had," that's when I finally spoke. I remember a lot. My voice was steady, cool, unshaken. I remember begging for respect. I remember being humiliated, lied to, discarded like trash. I remember you planning my erasure while smiling at another woman. He flinched. Carolyn blinked quickly, fighting tears. Maybe, or guilt. Hard to tell. "Rachel," she finally said, her voice raspy. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. But we don't have anyone else. I just thought maybe you could help us through this." The silence that followed was thick. I tilted my head slightly. Not cruel, just clear, funny. "I used to pray for just a little kindness from you. Now it's your turn." Travis looked like he might cry, but I didn't let him. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "I just regret ever thinking you were worth the pain." Then, without raising my voice, without slamming anything, I closed the door, firmly, finally. Inside, the music was still playing, the light was still golden, and I was still free. After the door closed behind them, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble or replay their faces in my head 1,000 times like I used to. I just walked to my balcony, took a deep breath, and smiled. For the first time in years, I felt like my life belonged to me again. That week, I packed up the last remnants of my old life and moved into a cozy apartment in Santa Barbara, California. It was smaller, simpler, perched just 3 blocks from the beach, the kind of place where the windows stayed open and the air always smelled like salt and citrus. I wasn't running away. I was choosing forward. I started a podcast called After the Storm, a space where women could share stories of emotional manipulation, hidden abuse, and the strength it takes to leave. No filters, no fake empowerment quotes, just truth. To my surprise, it took off. Emma designed the logo, an abstract of a broken shell turning into a wave. She moved to Denver shortly after and enrolled in a graphic design program. We talked every week, exchanged sketches and audio files, cheered each other on like survivors of the same shipwreck. "You were the first person who saw me," she said once during a call. "You made me want to live out loud." Her words stuck. That's when we decided to build something bigger. We co-founded an online community called Voices Reclaimed. It started small, a forum for women rebuilding after betrayal. But it grew fast. We offered free templates for protective legal letters, hosted anonymous story circles, posted recovery guides. We invited lawyers, therapists, even financial advisors who volunteered their time to help women navigate the path back to themselves. It wasn't a business, it was a mission. We weren't just ex-wives or former stepsisters, we were proof. That strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rises quietly, in the form of boundaries, of forgiveness, of finally saying no. One evening, I stood in front of a packed room at a women's leadership conference in San Diego. My first public talk. I shared my story, not just the betrayal, but the numbness that followed. The way I'd looked in the mirror and not recognized myself, and how reclaiming my voice had nothing to do with revenge, and everything to do with remembering I had one. When I finished, the room stood, not for the drama, not for the recording or the courtroom win, but because I had lived to tell the truth and invited others to do the same. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens the moment you choose to believe that your pain was real and your future is still yours to shape. If there's one thing life has taught me through all of this, it's that strength isn't always loud. It's not always the moment you flip the table or deliver a perfect comeback in a crowded restaurant. It's often quieter than that. It's choosing to walk away when you still love someone, but finally love yourself more. It's letting people misunderstand you without needing to explain anymore. It's closing the door softly, not because you're weak, but because you're done begging to be heard by those who never listened. I used to think that being a good wife meant sacrificing, that if I just stayed calm, stayed patient, kept folding the towels the way they liked, they'd see my worth. But the truth, some people don't want a partner. They want a placeholder, someone to absorb the blame, to carry the emotional labor, to smile when insulted, and apologize when hurt. What they don't expect is that one day the placeholder wakes up and leaves. Here's what I've learned, and maybe it'll help you too. 1. Never confuse someone's comfort with your purpose. Just because they're at ease with you staying small doesn't mean you were meant to be silent. 2. Boundaries are not punishments. You're not cruel for removing yourself from people who chip away at your peace. You're not dramatic for asking to be treated with basic respect. 3. Healing isn't pretty, but it's powerful. There will be days when you doubt yourself, when you miss the version of them they showed you in the beginning, when you replay every moment, wondering what you could have done differently, and then one day, you stop, you breathe, you smile, you laugh without needing to explain why, and you realize you've reclaimed your voice. 4. Sometimes the people who hurt you will return. Not because they're sorry, but because their new supply ran dry, because the fantasy collapsed, because you were the stable one all along. When that day comes, remember who you had to become to survive their absence. Remember who you are now. You don't owe anyone access to the version of you they tried to break. 5. Finally, your worth is not up for debate. Not by your partner, not by their family, not by anyone who only loved you when it was convenient. You don't need closure from those who never cared. You don't need revenge to feel whole. You need peace, and peace is what happens when the truth finally outweighs the lie. So to anyone listening who's ever been gaslighted, used, dismissed, or made to feel like a burden, you are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not crazy for noticing the shift or asking the hard questions. You are not what they reduced you to in their version of the story. You are allowed to rise, to rebuild, to reclaim your name, your space, your life. And when you do, you'll realize that being left behind was never the punishment. It was the permission to begin again on your own terms.